Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 14 of Pigskin Glory. Tonight we're going to be discussing March of 1976. And a quick note before I introduce the panelists. In the middle of the month, I changed the way I posted, and you will see that as I started writing more in depth on the post and adding daily recaps. With that said, I'm not going to read you the entire post. I want you to go to Pigskin Glory on Facebook and see it for yourself. We're just going to highlight what's happening and discuss them. Joining me tonight, to my left, is Chris. Joining us tonight is the man who's basically running his own front office this week, handling the expansion draft, breaking down the numbers, and probably already building depth charts for Seattle and Tampa Bay. Chris is here with us tonight. Chris, tell me, how many spreadsheets deep are you right now?
As many spreadsheets as John McKay has clips ready for the press.
And to my right, the left on the video, Charles. And rounding out our panel, our resident West Coast voice and baseball expert. But tonight he's diving into football as the league starts shifting under feet. Charles joins us. Charles, and I got to ask, does this feel like more like building a team or tearing 26 of them apart?
We have a little bit about both there with the expansion team. There's more so building a team here because the Seahawks and Bucks will draft players that are not protected by established clubs.
Okay, it's the unprotected, which means you're not going to get like the best of the best. Like you're not going to be able to draft like the superstar runner from so and so. You're basically getting the leftovers.
Now let's jump right into March of 1976, and the first post wasn't until March 4th, and it's the NFL lawyers getting tough on Kapp. Now, we are going to talk a lot about this court case that was going on in March of 1976, as it took up basically the entire month. I'm not going to stop and ask questions here. This is the first post, but the lawyers are basically attacking Kapp's $10 million antitrust damage suit, claiming that he was offered a chance to rejoin an NFL team and walked away from it. On March 5th, we talked more about it, and Joe Kapp put the onus on Pete Rozelle. Now, Chris, as this court case takes center stage in the battle in the offseason, is there fan interest, and do the fans even understand what it's about?
It's a weird case because Joe Kapp hasn't taken an NFL snap in a couple of years. And, you know, this isn't like the Kurt Flood versus baseball said. This is a different type of situation. You know, Charles could probably expand on that with like the Kurt Flood antitrust situation, but this seems a little different from that one.
Was Joe Kapp traded to a club against his will, refused to report? I want Kurt Flood?
Joe Kapp was basically told that if he wanted to continue playing, he'd have to sign the standard contract, and he felt he should be worth more than the standard contract, and he also felt that he shouldn't be, limited to where he could play. Although we really don't get into that, it's just he feels his value is worth more than what the Patriots were forcing him to sign.
Too bad the NFL does not have more than the players, so it doesn't have more than Miller on their team.
Yep.
Also on March 5th, Tampa Bay starting to move the moving pieces before the expansion draft as they signed quarterbacks Bill Kappelman, formerly of Florida State, and James Foote, linebacker, and Leroy Johnson, and tight end. And quarterback James Foote, linebacker Leroy Johnson, and tight end John Andrews. They're all free agents. Down in Texas, they hired Jack Burns and Sonny Everett as part-time offensive coaching assistants for the
Jack
Texas
Burns was Jack Burns was actually the offensive coordinator of the Vikings in the mid-90s before Brian Billick took over.
Passing away on March 5th, 1976, John Thurman. He played tackle for the Los Angeles Buccaneers in 1926. Yes, you heard that right. The Los Angeles Buccaneers of the NFL. There was no obituary that I could find. More transactions on March 6th as Tampa Bay quarterback Bill Kappelman and tight end John Andrews signed as free agents. It's the same listing as the day before, but just, a different paper was covering it. Tampa Bay signed offensive lineman Larry Gagne, formerly of the University of Florida, and most recently with Jacksonville, the defunct WFL. So he's been able to play his entire career in Florida. He continues to do so. Passing away on March 9th, 1976, Anthony Golombeski, football coach, former head football coach at Providence College and former assistant coach at Holy Cross, died Tuesday in Worcester, Mass. Mr. Golombeski coached the Providence College football team from 1925 until 1933 and was one of the founders of the Providence Steamrollers of the NFL, early professional football team. He also played end, guard, and center in 1926 and 1929. Again, you can see how we're flying through it, as I didn't get as in depth as you'll see in just a few days. March 12th, the Pittsburgh Steelers' John Spazzafaro signed as an offensive coach, and the New York Giants' Ray Rhodes, wide receiver, and Bob Hyland, center, were signed. Chris, what about this Ray Rhodes? Is he going to make? He obviously caught a touchdown pass against the Bills last year, but you think he'll make any bigger waves beyond just being a wide receiver?
Depends. Well, we go to a contending team, and as for the Giants, somebody's got to catch the passes other than Bob Tucker.
In the NFL, we are now on March 14th. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers named Kurt Mosier Dallas Public Relations Director. Dallas promoted Joe Toddy. That must be a typo. Joe Toddy, assistant PR director, as public relations director. San Francisco named Jim Spavital offensive backfield coach at the New York Jets as their offensive coordinator. And Alabama promoted defensive line coach Ken Donahue to assistant coach, a post held previously by Sam Bailey, who retains his job as associate athletic director. Also named junior varsity coach Clem Griska as administrative assistant. Other than the Doe Toddy name, which might be a last name, I don't know. Anything stand out to you guys here?
Thank you. Not to be confused with the talk show host who holds the same last name, who would later marry Franklin.
So basically, the 49ers signed the offensive backfield coach from the Jets to fill their spots. So from Joe Namath to not Joe Namath. I guess that's an upgrade.
On March 15th, from the sports pages, as you can see here, we get into different kind of posts. The NFL ponders limits on rosters. Right now, you can go as high as 47, and the NFL ownership meetings are looking at 43 as the limit. Now, Chris, the extra depth of a 47-team roster could help teams with injuries and whatnot, but at 43, it makes tougher decisions and more of a chess game in football. What are your thoughts on this?
George Allen once famously said 40 men together can't lose, so I guess now he's going to have to say 43 or 47 men together can't lose.
Also at the NFL meeting, Charles, the draft, league owners were considering a proposal that would delay the college draft until after the Super Bowl, a major change from traditional timing that teams had been used to for years. The idea has been pushed by players' union representatives who believed moving the draft later could help simplify negotiations and reduce complications surrounding player rights. What are your thoughts on the draft going later in the spring?
National draft was done during football season and college football season. It makes perfect sense.
Sure, if you remember, Vinny, some of the previous season recaps I've done, the drafts were usually done around that little time of January from previous stuff we've done.
We want to take a quick second here on March 15th, 1976, to wish a happy negative 10th birthday to Chris. Chris, one of the voices you hear as he's just finished talking, brings incredible football knowledge and a sharp mind for statistics to the panel, from breaking down the history of the game to helping behind the scenes with research and ideas. Now, Chris, being negative 10, I'm sure you have a lot of memories of 1976.
1988.
That would make me negative 12.
Oh, negative 12. I'm sorry.
So.
All right. One of the features, and in April we're going to expand this a little more, that I also bring it out is Football Digest. I went and got the 1976 Football Digest on eBay. As you can see, and it's also the picture behind me, O.J. Simpson, the cover athlete of the Football Digest for April 1976. He's was named the Player of the Year for Football Digest, and just quickly looking around at some of the other, Harold Jackson, Ron Jesse disagree on the effect of the zone defense. In April, we're going to get more in depth, and hopefully all of my pictures will be right side up, unlike this. Chris, were you ever a fan of Football Digest growing up?
I was more of a well, no, but not because I didn't, because the magazine that I always remember was Hockey Digest. Same magazine, different sport. Basically the same concept.
And Charles, what
I
about
guess we're
you?
all, I guess we're all digest of a different variety.
Charles was baseball, I had hockey.
So on March 16th, looking back, that is the issue of. Okay, we'll get it right. NFL paid attendance takes a dip in 1975. A newspaper report from the March 1975 revealed an interesting trend in the NFL. Chris, attendance went down. Do you think that has anything to do with the blackout rule changing?
I think that might be a thing because, for years, certain things, but now the theory is, well, you can get to see the game anyway. And, the sellout rule is a little weird because, as you know, Vinny, there were some years where some Bills games were locally blacked out, even though you look back and you're thinking, that game was blacked out?
Interesting note in this article that the Buffalo Bills actually led the league in attendance in 1975.
The Lions are second. That is shocking considering they didn't even make the playoffs, but I will mention they were new stadium, the Silverdome.
Yeah, the shiny new toy. Memphis is still on the outside. At the NFL annual owners meeting, they discussed whether they would admit a 29th franchise in Memphis. However, league leadership, including commissioner, indicated that there are still major obstacles. Of course, Charles, most notably, one of those obstacles would be the fact that it would give the league an uneven number of teams.
Right.
And the NFL would actually experiment with that for a couple years 99, 2000, 2001, when the Browns 2.0 came back. But before the technical, there was a stretch when you had 31 teams, and there was literally every week had a bye week. Really, there was a bye week. At least one team had a bye from 1 through 17.
Wow.
Also, looking back 50 years, March 16th, 1976, troubles brewing in East Lansing as reports have surfaced that Denny Stoles, head football coach at Michigan State, would soon be stepping down. March is not the most ideal time to have to try to find a new football coach, Charles. What are your thoughts on such a late off-season change?
And it gives teams a disadvantage because all the available coaches, by and large, were taken, pro and college. Lou Holtz went to the Jets, and Marty Clark is now with the San Francisco 49ers. And Dick Vermeil is now with the Eagles. So, wow.
The Houston Oilers have named Ken McCullough, former Canadian Football League coach since '69, as their offensive line coach on March 16th.
Nice.
And the NFL college draft scheduled despite expansion team protest. So the 26 teams and expansion, as well as major topic, have voted, and they've scheduled the NFL draft. And I don't see the exact date. Maybe it's in the paper itself. But anyway, it will be coming up, I believe, in April. Chris, do you know any more about that?
The draft thing, this may have been one of the first times it would be pushed after the Super Bowl because I do remember that Jim Plunkett was drafted in January '71 after the Rose Bowl, but not super late after the Super Bowl.
I speak Jim Plunkett. There's a rumor going around that the 49ers may be interested in acquiring Jim Plunkett from the Patriots for Tom Owen and 2 future draft picks.
We'll get to
be
that. We'll
getting
get to that.
at the end of the month. That is definitely a major story that will be developing. Here on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, a major legal battle is brewing between the NFL players and league, as the National Football League Players Association has filed a lawsuit against the league and Commissioner Rozelle challenging the controversial Rozelle rule. The rule, excuse me, allowed the commissioner to award compensation to a team that lost a free agent, often discouraging player movement between clubs. Chris, this lawsuit followed a recent federal court decision that had already ruled against the rule in a case involving former Baltimore Colts tight end John Mackey. What are your thoughts on the Players Association challenging this rule?
Now, awarding compensation to a team that loses a free agent. Charles, that sounds like something that happened in baseball in the 80s. Because remember, in the early days of free agency, if you signed a free agent, you had to give up a draft pick or two.
Yep. Yeah, that refers into in the baseball collective bargaining agreement in mid '76.
Famous example. What? I'll give you an example. When Mark Teixeira left the Angels to sign with the Yankees, the compensation draft pick they got, Mike Trout.
And on the flip side, Pete Rose was signed with the Philadelphia Phillies. The Reds got no one draft pick, but Dan Lamar never got past AA ball.
You never know.
Here's another angle from this story. It's 79. Where was it? I just saw it.
79.
79
current and former
a
players.
lawsuit filed by the Players Association threatened to cost the league millions. 79 current and former players filed a class action lawsuit against the NFL. So this is why it's class action. It's not just what's going on with the Joe Kapp case. It's 79 current and former players are going challenging the Rozelle rule.
Keep in mind, we're
And
still we're almost 28 years away from real free agency. We're still a long ways away from that.
1993. That's 17 years.
So basically, it's going to be basically if you have a really good roster, you could literally just keep all your guys unless you trade or cut them. You can literally. That's how Washington was able to hold onto their hogs forever.
So back at the league meetings, the NFL has made it official. They are remaining at 28 teams. Charles, Memphis is officially out.
Oh, too bad for Memphis.
Three teams, though.
They're ever going to get another crack at free agency. I mean, expansion.
Three expansion teams might be a lot. Now, as you know, Charles, baseball once had 4 expansion teams in 1 year.
Yep, 69. Padres, Expos, Royals, and Pilots. Now Brewers.
All right. So here, March 17th is where we get into the daily recap. And this is where I will get into, I'll look from here on out, we will look at the headlines, and then I will get to the recap and ask the questions. So, 50 years ago today in football was a busy day of headlines across the football world. NFL expansions halted. League owners voted to keep the NFL at 28 teams, turning away expansion bids from cities like Memphis and Birmingham. Commissioner Pete Rozelle cited ongoing legal and labor issues as reasons to delay expansion. Players take legal action. 79 current and former players filed a class action lawsuit against the NFL challenging the controversial Rozelle rule, which limited player movement between teams. The case could potentially cost the league millions of dollars. The Super Bowl site has been confirmed as the league also finalized future championship locations. Super Bowl 11 will be played in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, while Super Bowl 12 was awarded to the Louisiana Superdome. Note there, it'll become the first indoor Super Bowl. The NFL is heading into night. Oh, I forgot coaching move as the Oilers added Ken McCullough, offensive line coach after several seasons coaching the Canadian Football League. The NFL is heading into the 1976 season facing legal battles, expansion debates, and major organizational changes, all while preparing for the arrival of 2 new franchises, the Seattle Seahawks and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. History in motion, one headline at a time. We've already asked the questions on this. We'll move on to March 18th. Guys, do you have anything else to say on March 17th?
Come a long way from Super Bowls in Rice and Tulane Stadium, it looks like.
So as you can see, as I scroll up, there are... oh, I don't have a daily... Oh, I do. Okay. Nope. All right, so I must have been hit or miss with the daily recap. I apologize for that. It is a daily thing now, going forward. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers' Abe Gibron, his title has been changed from defensive line coach to defensive coordinator. Of course, Abe Gibron, former head coach of the Chicago Bears, and the NFL owners discuss future rule changes. Let's get into that. The NFL owners are already thinking about the future of the game. At league meetings, discussions began around possible rule changes, including expanding the use of instant replay, uh, in a limited form to help officials review certain calls. There are also conversions about adjusting timing rules, including shortening the play clock from 30 to 25 seconds and improving enforcement of penalties. Commissioner Pete Rozelle and league officials were exploring ways to make the game more efficient, fair, and fan-friendly. While many of these ideas were still in early discussion stages, they showed how the NFL in the 1970s were beginning to evolve into the modern game we recognize today. Charles, what are your thoughts on a potential replay being used in pro sports?
Games on television these days, say for a black guy on the home market gets instant replay will be a lot easier for the officials to go through on very close plays. I think it's going to happen eventually at some point. Objective there is to get the play correct.
And remember, there was a very controversial play this past season that definitely could have used in replay, the Mel Gray Phantom catch.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the Cardinals and Redskins game, right?
Yep. The touchdown that wasn't, then was, then wasn't, then was.
Looking at March 19th now, the Montreal Alouettes have signed Clifford Crenshaw, wide receiver. We have a breakthrough in NFL talks. Could there be a breakthrough as Commissioner Pete Rozelle and the National Football League President Dick Anderson announced they believed the stalemate in contract negotiations had come to an end? After weeks of tension between the league and players, the update signaled possible progress toward a new agreement. Here's a personal note for my hometown. John Muldowney, who would become one of my coaches, T.C. Norbin and Todd Faubert have been announced as captains for the 1976 team. The 1976 team will be inducted in the Saranac Lake High School Hall of Fame in the year 2023. My team was inducted in 2024, 76, and 2023. So, and John Muldowney, I went to school with his daughter, and his son was a couple years behind me. And as I said, John Muldowney was one of my quarterbacks coach when I was on varsity. From the pros, here we go. We've got a daily recap. From the pros to the local fields, football headlines were everywhere. Possible breakthrough in labor talks. Commissioner Pete Rozelle and the National Football League Players Association expressed optimism that the contract stalemate between players and owners may be coming to an end. The Montreal Alouettes added wide receiver Clifford Crenshaw, continuing the steady flow of talent across the football world. And Saranac Lake, New York, 3 players are named captains for the 76th season. From the NFL's labor battles to roster moves in the CFL and all the way down to local high school fields, March of 1976 showed that football story is told at every level of the game. Chris, Canada, high school, NFL, football never rests, even in 1976 in March.
Imagine if the World Football League was still going on. Imagine if the WFL had managed to survive a second season.
I don't think the world was ready for 2 football leagues.
No,
I mean,
not
the
quite.
CFL is enough. And NFL and CFL is enough, but 3 basically felt like overkill.
You do think about it, though. In the 60s and 70s, the AFL, the WHA, and the ABA, all 3 of the major leagues were going through this merger process with a rival league. The WFL just came too soon after the American Football League, and they didn't have the television contract and whatnot. And of course, baseball since 1902, 1903 has had the 2-league system working great.
1901.
Although I will mention, Charles, there was an interesting story in which there was a threat to form another major league that led to expansion.
1959 International League, yes.
Yeah, and that basically led to the 61 and 62 expansions.
The Angels, the Senators, the Mets, and the Colt 45, now Astros.
Yep.
Moving on to March 20th, in Miami, the John Bassett, owner of the Memphis Southmen, has released former Dolphins Zonka Warfield and Kick. Atlanta's Doug Weaver, athletic director at Southern Illinois, was named to the same position at Georgia Tech. We have more information going on the Joe Kapp legal battle. We'll get to that in the recap, if I have a recap. And passing away, Tut Imlay back for the Los Angeles Buccaneers in 1926, the New York Giants in 1927. Interesting, no, not interesting because players passing away, but two members of the Los Angeles Buccaneers team that only lasted one season in the NFL passed away in March of 1976. Excuse me. All right, here we go. Saturday, March 20th, 1976. The offseason storylines continue to unfold across the football world. Zonka, Warfield, Kick, and Limbo. Commissioner Pete Rozelle stated that Larry Zonka, Paul Warfield, and Jim Kick could sign with NFL teams, but only after being officially declared free agents following the collapse of the World Football League. The NFL remained tied up in legal issues, including ongoing questions surrounding the player movement and contracts, as cases like the Joe Kapp lawsuit continue to highlight tensions between the players and league. John Bassett officially releases those three Dolphins that we talked about, making them free agents. Doug Weaver has been named the athletic director at Georgia Tech, marking a shift in leadership at the college role, and the football world paused to remember Tut Imlay, a player from the early days of the NFL who passed away at the age of 74. His career with the Los Angeles Buccaneers and New York Giants placed him among the generation that helped build the game. From contract disputes to league fallout and moments of remembrance, March of 1976 showed football evolving both on and off the field. Charles, with the WFL fallout, teams don't exist, but they still had to release players from their contracts so that the NFL could officially sign them and not have to deal with any legal issues should a Memphis Southman try to form somewhere else. What are your thoughts on these three Dolphins, and do they get signed in the NFL?
They should so fully. They're out of a job. They're not getting paid. It's ridiculous.
John Bassett Jr.
They should have a right if they want to return the NFL.
John Bassett Jr. did what nobody in the AFC East could do: break up the Miami Dynasty.
Moving on to March 21st, we've got an interesting look for this Sunday. We're going to talk about women's football. We're going to look at Drew Pearson playing basketball, and another two-sport NFLer, Ed was it Ed Too Tall Jones, I believe? No, John Matuzak.
No, John Matuzak, the Twos,
is going to try his hand at boxing. It's a very unusual Sunday in the football world, not about games, but about how far the game has reached beyond the field. Women's football growing. A featured highlighted Candy Culp of the Dallas Shamrocks, showing that women's football, though often overlooked, was continuing to grow across the country. From the gridiron to the hardwood, as Drew Pearson of the Dallas Cowboys took part in charity basketball game, showing the versatility of the NFL athletes and their connection to their communities. From football to boxing, John Matuzak of the Kansas City Chiefs is reportedly considering stepping away from football to pursue boxing, an idea that perfectly captured the unpredictable nature of 1970s sports world. From expanding opportunities to charity events to athletes considering entirely new careers, this wasn't a typical football Sunday. It was a reminder that in 1976, the story of football wasn't just being written on the field, it was being shaped everywhere else too. Chris, of these three unique stories on this Sunday, which one is most interesting to you?
Drew Pearson, because football and basketball rarely intersect. But the Cowboys, they used to do this thing. In fact, even into the early '90s, I think, believe it or not, Vinny, even Michael Irvin and some of those guys who did this little basketball thing before Dallas started winning Super Bowls.
Charles, what are your thoughts on the three unique football stories?
Just to approve us. Sports writers won't find anything interesting and put it on a newspaper for people to see.
Moving on to March 22nd, we got a business move in Denver as the Denver Broncos looking at rental rates, stadium, their contract with Mile High Stadium, and net ticket sales. We also look at, since it's a Monday, Sports Illustrated. The cover athlete is California prodigy Tracy Austin. There's not a lot to talk about when it comes to football in this. Let me move this aside, move you aside real quick. There's some, I think these are games or books. Yeah, games. Super Bowl bound, the authentic college football action game. And we have book talk. And also you can get some, that's the bowl bound thing. Um, there's a description of those events, but Sports Illustrated comes out every Monday. And on Mondays, I will be posting pictures, what I can find from them. Here's a look at the actual day in question. From business decisions to the fan experience, football's reach continued to grow. Broncos get a financial advantage as the Denver Broncos secured one of the lowest stadium rental deals in the league, highlighting how the business side of football was becoming increasingly important. In football and living rooms across America, a new issue of Sports Illustrated show how fans were engaging with the game beyond Sundays through books, strategy guides, and tabletop football games. By March of 1976, football wasn't just being played on the field, it was being built in boardrooms and experienced in homes across the country. Chris, your thoughts on the Broncos and their stadium rental deal, the cheapest in the league?
Wouldn't have expected Denver to do it because Denver's doing pretty decently. I would have thought it would be like a New Orleans or an Atlanta. I wouldn't have figured Denver would have that.
What about Tampa? What about the upcoming Seahawks or Buccaneers expansion teams?
That's
well, they're new stadiums. I mean,
yeah, 2 new stadiums to the football, but not. I mean, the Kingdom's been around a couple of years. Tampa Bay's Houlihan Stadium. I don't know if it was called that at the time. The big sombrero. I don't know how new that is either. Those would definitely be things to look into. I'm sure their stadium deals is what kind of help the cities get NFL clubs, though.
Well, at least the Seahawks are playing the Kingdom and not say Six Stadium.
Yeah. Weird. Hey, I wore the same shirt when I did this video on births in March of 1976. 2 quarterbacks on March 24th were born on the same day. Aaron Brooks and Peyton Manning. And we're on March 22nd, so we're just 2 days away, as their mothers are probably very uncomfortable on this 22nd of March, 1976.
Brooks, who
I could say side quest videos that I'll be doing to look at what else is going on in the world in 1976. On March 23rd, the legal battle between the players and league remained front and center. The NFL defends standard contracts as Joe Kapp, they point out that he was offered a standard contract in 71 and refused to sign it. We'll get more into that in the recap. The NFL draft is looking and taking a look at the Seahawks and Buccaneers, as they will also have the expansion draft on the 30th and 31st. Rozelle takes the witness stand in the Kapp lawsuit. Big news coming out of that. And passing away on March 23rd is Joe Crake's end with the Cincinnati Reds football team in 1933. He was a player in the early days of the NFL, passed away at the age of 67. He played end for the Reds during the 33 season, one of the many short-lived franchises that were part of the league's early history. Beyond football, Crakes served his country in the U.S. Air Force, retiring as a colonel and living a life of service after his playing days. Let's take a look overall what happened on this day, as the NFL offseason was anything but quiet. The Kapp case takes center stage as the ongoing legal battle involving Joe Kapp continued to dominate headlines as Commissioner Pete Rozelle took the stand to defend the league's contract system. What began as a dispute has grown into a major test of player rights and league authority. The expansion draft approaches. The Seattle Seahawks and Tampa Bay Buccaneers prepared to build their rosters with an expansion draft set to stock both teams ahead of their inaugural season. A new chapter of NFL football is just days away. And remembering Joe Crakes, who played for the Reds in 33. Chris, let's take a look at this courtroom battle. Joe Kapp, Pete Rozelle, the central figures. Rozelle taking the stand. Where does this leave the NFL going forward as their contract system is under high scrutiny?
Timing couldn't have been any worse. I mean, you're a week away from an expansion draft and 2 weeks away from the actual draft. And Rozelle's got to focus on that stuff. And now here's this other thing threatening to, disrupt plans.
Charles, how are other teams looking at this as they begin to build toward the drafts that are coming up? But they know that a court decision may change how they manage their rosters.
Well, the Detroit. Look at the Detroit Free Press, and it's saying that three Lions are going to lose 3 veterans in the NFL draft Although Alty Taylor, despite his recent plea to be moved, he's not going to be traded. Not going to be left unprotected. He is worth much more as trade bait if indeed the Lions will even trade him.
On March 24th, we already mentioned the birth of Peyton Manning and Aaron Brooks, two playoff quarterbacks. Peyton Manning, of course, has a bit better career than Brooks, but don't forget, Aaron Brooks did win a playoff game for the Saints. The NFL
First win in Saints hit, first playoff win in Saints history, and they upset the greatest show on turf Rams literally in between Super Bowl appearances.
The NFL defends its power structure again with Rozelle on the stand, and he discusses that. Also on the 24th, Rozelle says Kapp had an offer to return in '73. This is huge news coming out that Joe Kapp was given a contract offer 2 years after he was basically, as he claimed, blacklisted from the league. The Seahawks continued building their roster, signing Solomon Freelon and center Jay Douglas. And Zonka meets with the Dolphins, so it's big news coming there, as we'll get more into that. Passing away is Frank McCormick, back for the Akron Pros. The APFA, which was what the NFL was known, champion Akron Pros in 1920 and 21, and he also played for the Cincinnati Celts or Celts. I don't know if it's like the basketball team, it's Celts, but if it's like
Celts,
if it's pronounced the way it's supposed to be, it's Celts. 1921. Stability, lawsuits, and football's early roots. The National Football League continued to navigate one of the most important legal battles in its history, as Commissioner Pete Rozelle once again took center stage in the Joe Kapp case. Rozelle defended the league's structure and controversial Rozelle rule, pointing to the success of teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers as proof that competitive balance worked. At the same time, testimony revealed that Joe Kapp had been given an opportunity to return to the league in 1973 if he agreed to sign a standard contract, the very issue at the heart of the dispute. Elsewhere around the league, the build-up to expansion continued, with the Seattle Seahawks and Tampa Bay Buccaneers preparing to enter. The NFL veteran player selection plans and roster construction remained a major focus across all 28 teams. And Enquirer notes of the day, a reminder of football's earliest days. Frank McCormick, a back from the league's founding era and a member of the 1920 champion Akron Pros, passed away. His career serves as a bridge back to the very beginning of professional football. From the courtroom battles to shaping free agency to expansion reshaping the league to honoring one of the game's earliest champions, March 24th, 1976 captured the NFL's past, present, and future all at once, and not to mention the birth of Peyton Manning and Aaron Brooks. Charles, your thoughts on the revelation that Joe Kapp was given a contract offer in 1973?
That didn't reveal until this late in the process. It's gotta be leverage as far as Pete Rozelle is concerned.
1973 was a bit of a low scoring, not a great year for quarterback play. I'm shocked that a team didn't bite on Kapp, because there were some teams that could have used a quarterback in '73.
Moving on to March 25th, Tampa Bay and Minnesota make roster moves. We'll get to that. I had a side quest video, if you will, with the best-selling books of that week. You can check that out on Pigskin Glory. NFL paints Kapp as overpaid in court as the legal battle continued to press on. George Blanda took the stand to testify in the case. And expansion builds while courtroom battle intensifies. While the future of the NFL is being debated in a courtroom, teams were busy building for the present. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers continued constructing their inaugural roster, adding multiple free agents as they prepared to enter the league. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Vikings tapped into talent while the defunct World Football League signing running back Willie Spencer. Another sign of how the WFL's collapse was feeding the NFL depth. But the biggest story remained the Joe Kapp case. The NFL, led by Commissioner Pete Rozelle, took an aggressive stance portraying Joe Kapp as an overpaid quarterback who chose to walk away from the game rather than accept the league's contract structure. Testimony added further complexity. Veteran quarterback George Blanda did little to strengthen Kapp's argument, while other voices around the league loomed as potential influences on the jury. As arguments neared their conclusion, the stakes were unmistakable. A decision for Kapp could change player rights forever. A decision for the NFL would solidify the league's control. From roster building in Tampa Bay to legal battles in San Francisco, March 25th, 1976 showed the NFL growing on the field and fighting for its structure off of it. Charles, your thoughts on the NFL painting Joe Kapp as an overpaid quarterback?
This comes just after the Messerschmitt McNally case in December '75. The arbitrator sided with the players, and you gotta wonder if probably because of the Major League Spring Training lockout that lasted 19 days in March. And so for you don't want to maybe the owners are hoping being the judge will rule in favor of the owners for fear that if a decision favors Joe Kapp, that we could have top sports go through some revolutionary changes.
Moving on to March 26th, the new NFLPA officers management to meet. That will include Dick Anderson, Kermit Alexander, Wellington Mara, the New York Giants, and as well. More NFL doubles down on Kapp being vastly overpaid. Players and owners meet amid uncertainty, as we mentioned earlier. The British Columbia Lions have signed quarterback Mike Ernst. March 26, 1976 continued a theme we've been seeing all week. Football wasn't being played on the field, but it was being fought for everywhere else. The ongoing legal battle between Joe Kapp and the NFL remained front and center. Commissioner Pete Rozelle and the league doubled down in their stance portraying Kapp as an overpaid quarterback, while defending the structure of the league and the authority of standard contracts. It wasn't just about one player anymore. It was about control, precedent, and the future of player rights. At the same time, the business side of football pushed forward. The NFL Players Association and league ownership prepared to meet, a sign that both sides knew the growing tension around the contracts and player freedoms couldn't be ignored forever. And while all that was unfolding at the top, the everyday rhythm of football carried on. Up north in the CFL, the British Columbia Lions made a simple but important move, signing quarterback Mike Ernst as the kind of transaction that rarely makes headlines, but these are the moves that quietly shape rosters and seasons. The bigger picture, March 26, gives us a full snapshot of football in 1976. A league defending its power, players beginning to push back, and teams still building for the future. It's not flashy, but it's real. And it's all a part of how modern game was being formed. Chris, your thoughts now on the NFL and their stance they're taking. Joe Kapp is an overplayed player, and at the same time, the NFL is willing to meet with the NFL Players Association moving forward.
It's just so confusing. I mean, we're talking about Joe. I know Joe Kapp took the Vikings to the Super Bowl, but it feels like, I mean, I know Joe Kapp, didn't things in it, but this is getting a little goofy. I mean, what exactly is Rozelle trying to prove? That he's trying to, shut down the pay of players, make players less paid? Like, what's the point?
Charles, any thoughts on that?
It's matter not dissimilar to Troy Finley not missing an insurance payment on Cavendich's contract in October '74, and Cavendish took the case to arbitrator. He was declared free agency, and he signed for $3.5 million with the Yankees. Also, the NFL player Joe Kapp might be looking at Cavendish, Hunter, Messerschmitt, and McNally for inspiration.
Moving on into March 27th, the Alouettes of Montreal have named Dick Roach Washington State University assistant coach as their defensive coordinator, and Denver Science defensive tackle Bryson Manor. We got a weekly recap after that. It's a wild week from March 21st to 27th. If you're looking for touchdowns and game-winning drives, this wasn't that kind of week. But if you want to understand how modern football is being shaped, this week is loaded. It started with one of the most unusual football Sundays you'll ever see. We saw Dallas Cowboys star Drew Pearson on the basketball court, football players exploring opportunities outside the game, and even story about women's football continuing to grow. Despite limited attention, it was a reminder that in 1976, football wasn't yet the year-round machine we know today, but it's still finding its place in a wider sports world. Then came the real headline of the week: Joe Kapp versus the NFL lawsuit. Day after day, the league, led by Commissioner Pete Rozelle, defended its structure, its contracts, and ultimately its power. The NFL pushed the idea of stability and competitive balance, while Kapp's fight represented something bigger: player freedom. Testimony, arguments, and public statements filled the week, and you could feel it. This wasn't just a case, it was a turning point. And at the same time, football life kept moving. Expansion plans for Seattle and Tampa Bay were underway. With a veteran allocation draft on the horizon, teams are making signings, both in the NFL and CFL, quietly building rosters that would define upcoming seasons. From the Broncos adjusting finances and adding players, to the Montreal Alouettes shaping their coaching staff to routine transactions across the league. The foundation of football, the future football, was being laid piece by piece, and woven into it all were the human movements. We saw the passing of former players from football's earlier eras, reminders of how quickly the game evolves and how each generation builds on the last. And down in New Orleans, Saints quarterback Archie Manning welcomed the birth of his son, Peyton. Maybe we'll hear that name again someday. We also look beyond football, capturing the world of March 1976, rising stars, best-selling books, cultural moments that help paint the full picture of the time. The bigger picture, March 21st to 27th, shows us a sport in transition, fighting for control in the courtroom, expanding into new markets, growing across the leagues, and slowly becoming the year-round powerhouse we know today. No games, but a huge week for the future of football. Charles, your thoughts on the week, March 21st to 27th?
It sounds like a backdrop, and not just in the courtroom, but all aspects of the NFL.
Chris, what's the one thing you take away from this week?
The Peyton Manning and Aaron Brooks thing, which is ironic because Peyton Manning is born in Louisiana, and Aaron Brooks will become pretty well known in Louisiana. So it's a bit of they're pretty much linked with each other.
Connection.
Football doesn't stop, and on Sunday we move on. On March 28th, it's be a deck chair quarterback, as you could meet and talk with Oakland Raiders on a 7-day cruise. How about that, guys? Tampa Bay at it again as they signed free agent punter Randy Walker, tight end Fred Pasek, Ohio State defensive tackle Mike Sutton, Kansas place kicker Greg Enright, Southern Oregon wide receiver LaFell Williams. He's from Virginia Union. I'm sorry. Let's take a look, though, in the bigger picture. March 28th, as football wasn't just a sport anymore. It's becoming an experience. On one side, you had one of the most unique promotions you'll ever see. The Oakland Raiders, led by Ken Stabler, offered fans the chance to take a 7-day cruise to Mexico with the team. Imagine that for a second. Talking football, sharing drinks, watching film, and swapping stories with players like Fred Blitnikoff and Art Shell, all while sailing the Mexican Riviera. It wasn't just fandom, it was access. Meanwhile, on the other side of the football world, reality was setting in for a brand new franchise. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers continued building their roster through free agent signings as they prepared for their first season ever. No spotlight, no glamour, just the hard work of putting together a team from scratch. The bigger picture, March 28th, gives us one of the closest contrasts of the 1976 season. Football is entertainment lifestyle. Football is grind building from the ground up. Both were real, both mattered, and together they helped shape the game we know today. Chris, would you go on a cruise with the Oakland Raiders?
No, because as someone who's not a fan of them, if anything, I'd rather go on a cruise with an NFC team.
Charles, what are your thoughts on the idea of being trapped on a cruise ship with Ted Hendricks?
I guess it depends on whether you're a fan of a football team or not. But for the fan of football and becoming a year-round thing, what's going on here? There's baseball spring training, and there's March Madness and college basketball. The Indiana Hoosiers about to play a perfect season in their own right. All our 72 Dolphins.
Chris, I got one question about the cruise before we move on to March 29th. If Jack Tatum is offering you a drink, do you take it or do you run?
I'm not as big as Franco Harris, so I'd probably take it.
Moving on to March 29th, Larry Zonka's jersey from Memphis is being retired and sold at auction as the Memphis Southmen sell off their memorabilia to try to recoup some money. Moving on to is we've got the future taking shape this week. The 78 players are going to be headed to Seattle and Tampa Bay through the expansion draft. Denver announces the retirement of quarterback Charlie Johnson, and Tampa Bay signed punter. We already looked at this. It's the same news from Sunday. And it's Monday, so that means Sports Illustrated. Let me go ahead and move this off here. On the cover, Charles mentioned it, Indiana's Benson outmuscles Marquette in March Madness. That's the wrong way to go. Let's go this way. Okay. Also, we've got letters from the fans discussing Joe Paterno, and you can order some books on how to football defense, football offense. And not a lot going on in Sports Illustrated again in the off season, but it's always there, and it's been fun for me getting these Sports Illustrateds on eBay and looking through them. Well, let's take a look at March 29th in a snapshot. It might be one of the most complete snapshots of football you find because it showed the past, present, and future of the game all in one day. First, the past. In Memphis, what was left of the World Football League was being sold off piece by piece. Equipment, memorabilia from stars like Larry Zonka, Paul Warfield, and Jim Kick hit the auction block. Not preserved, not honored, just sold. A stark reminder of how quickly a league and its dreams can disappear. Then the future. The NFL was in full expansion mode, preparing for tomorrow's expansion draft to distribute 78 players to the Seattle Seahawks and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For both franchises, this was the beginning. For many players, it was a second chance. The league wasn't shrinking, it was growing. And finally, the present. We saw the natural cycle of the game continue. The Denver Broncos announced the retirement of quarterback Charlie Johnson, while the Buccaneers kept adding players to their inaugural roster. At the same time, Sports Illustrated reminded us that football wasn't just played on Sundays. It lived in conversations, books, leadership, and fan culture across the country. The bigger picture, March 29th, tells the whole of football in 1976, a fallen league fading away, a growing league expanding into new cities, careers ending and new ones beginning, and in a sport deeply embedded in everyday life is not just history, it's evolution. Chris, what are your thoughts on Memphis having to sell off their memorabilia just to recoup some money that they lost in the WFL venture?
Crazy how things have fallen. Remember, it's amazing. 1 minute you're basically pretty much ending the Miami Dolphins dynasty, and the next you're having to sell everything off. Like, just crazy. I mean, this is the team that literally killed Miami's dynasty, and they couldn't even make it to the halfway. They left. They signed in mid '74, and they couldn't even make it to the 2-year mark.
Charles, looking back on that, just a year ago, the WFL was looking toward its second season, and now teams are having to scrounge just to pay their bills. The teams that the league that folded.
It was a league that didn't plan ahead, didn't have that lucrative television contract, and when you don't have the television contract and so forth, and a good financial footing, it's going to fall apart. That's simple, and not just in sports, but in any business.
On March 30th, we've got the expansion draft, and we're definitely going to get into that all day long. That was the big news as players were shuffled off to their new franchises, 78 players, 39 to Seattle, 39 to Tampa Bay. The interesting note here is that as they begin choosing vets, how it was done through basically secret ballot, top secret procedure set, as the teams didn't know what the other teams were picking. It was being done kind of in a secret lottery, and they would find out afterwards if they got the players they put in for or if they had already gone to the other team. A new kind of running back emerges on March 30th as well, as we look at Chuck Foreman and his 1975 season records he set for receptions by running back, as that is definitely something that you didn't see out of running backs before. And Charles mentioned this earlier. We'll get to this too, as the 49ers are looking to trade for Jim Plunkett. The NFL's future begins to take shape this week as the expansion draft officially got underway, with Seattle and Tampa Bay preparing to reshape the league by selecting from a pool of 78 available players. Under a tightly controlled and secretive process, both franchises worked behind closed doors, building rosters that would define their early identity. But while new teams were being formed, established ones were making moves on their own. Trade speculation began to swirl around Jim Plunkett, as reports indicated the 49ers were closing in on a deal for the New England former Heisman Trophy winner, looking for a fresh start on the West Coast, his home area. He could soon find himself at the center of a franchise reset. At the same time, the expansion draft itself promised to reshape careers across the league as dozens of veterans faced uncertain future, some nearing the end, others still with something left to prove. This wasn't just about adding new teams, it was about the shifting balance of the entire NFL. Charles, let's take a look at that. Rumors about Jim Plunkett. And as a 49er fan, we know you weren't alive in 76, but if you were, how excited would you be at the prospect of getting the former Heisman Trophy winner?
It'd be amazing major upgrade over Tom Owen and the college quarterback that we had the last couple of years under Dick Nolan. Nolan, of course, was let go. Maureen Clark takes over. And by getting the San Jose native back home, it'll motivate Jim Plunkett to do better for his new team. On the Patriots side, the Patriots might give up on him because they feel they got another good quarterback waiting in the wings named Steve Grogan.
Chris, your thoughts on the expansion draft? Do you think the average fan understands what this means? The NFL hasn't expanded since 1968 or 67 with the New Orleans Saints, and the AFL in 68 with the Cincinnati Bengals. It's been 10 years. Do you think the fans know? Do you think the fans care?
I don't know. I mean, unless they luck into unless they luck into a Fran Tarkenton type of player, who knows? I mean, the Vikings, when they did in 61, they lucked into Tarkenton, but who knows what these guys are going to get in with the slim pickings, because all the top guys are protected, so it's not like they can draft like a superstar from one of these teams. You basically just have to take the leftovers.
March 31st brings about the results of the expansion draft, and again, you can look at the full list on Pigskin Glory on Facebook to take a look at the newspaper clippings of who moved and who went where. There is a lone hurdle, a deal, but it's not done yet between the 49ers and the Patriots, as a $75,000 loan tied to his time in New England created complications, raising questions about whether the deal could be finalized. And the Seattle, the big news here, I'll get to that in just a second, Charles. The big news out of the expansion draft is Seattle takes Bill Curtis of the Baltimore Colts. And Tampa Bay drafts John McKay's son to play for them, and dad as the coach. Calvin Hill, is he coming back to the league? As fans write into a newspaper, and Lamar Hunt reflects on the origin of the Super Bowl Roman numerals. Also going on is the trial. We haven't talked about it in a couple days, but the expensive trial over Joe Kapp and the NFL is still going on, as it's now a $10 million question. The case involving nearing its conclusion. Did Kapp walk away, or was he forced out? Plus, opportunity and frustration, as there's a chance that Dickey might be traded to the Green Bay Packers, as Houston given up on him. Players like Art Matthews were left stunned, questioning decisions, wondering what their future now held if a quarterback like Dickey could be moved, and of course Plunkett. And we look back at Marion Motley, the star fullback of the Cleveland Browns and one of the first African-American superstars in the game of football in the 1940s and 50s, as Milton Richmond's Sports Parade took a look at him on March 31st, 1976. Its expansion day changes the NFL forever. The NFL officially began to take shape for its newest franchises, as Seattle and Tampa Bay completed their expansion draft selections. Veteran players from across the league suddenly found themselves on new teams. Some chasing opportunity, others facing uncertainty. Names from nearly every corner of the NFL were reshuffled overnight, forming the foundation of two brand new franchises. For quarterbacks like Jim Plunkett, the league's shifting landscape hinted at major moves still to come, while players like Dickey simply hoped the chaos would open the door to a real opportunity. Not everyone welcomes the changes. Some, like Art Matthews, were left frustrated, caught in the business side of the game. Meanwhile, the legal battle surrounding Joe Kapp moved closer to a decision, and closing arguments bringing the high-stakes case near its end, one that could reshape player rights in the NFL. And in a quieter moment, Marion Motley reflected on his career, reminding everyone that while the league continues to evolve, its foundation was built by legends who came before. From expansion drafts to courtroom battles to reflections on football's past, March 31st, 1976 was the day that showed the NFL changing in real time. Charles, I know you're dying to talk about the Jim Plunkett situation, so go ahead.
$75,000 lot? Higher time to pay? Well, silly, if you ask me.
Yeah, let's go down to that. Here we are. So lone hurdle lies in Plunkett's path. The 49ers. Plunkett passed his second physical.
I'm saying that we do get Jim Plunkett, especially with Tom Owen, who we had the last couple of years drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Owen's going to be the Bucs quarterback.
Chris, your thoughts on the expansion draft, as that came and went, and some players are now calling Tampa and Seattle home.
Oh, Godspeed to those, and especially, and I do feel sorry for the ones who went from one of the playoff teams and top teams last year to well, that, because imagine if you're on like one of the playoff teams and you end up being chosen by them, like that's gotta suck.
All right, we've come to the end of March 1976. As April, we get into April. We've got the draft. We've got the continued Joe Kapp versus the NFL case, Tampa Bay and Seattle, how they're going to go forward. And of course, you're going to find many more stories. College gets into their spring football. Don't know how much that was covered in 1976. I'm interested to learn about that. Plus, we're going to be going over Football Digest a little more in depth, much like I did with there we go. As the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the cover of April's Football Digest, we're going to be going through page by page with daily posts from that. But it is time to look at baseball. Charles, spring training.
Well, because the Madison Smith McNally ruling, the owner of the Swans was to lock the players out of spring training for 19 days, but then ultimately Bowie Kuhn ordered training camps to reopen, while the two sides will continue negotiations on a new collective bargaining agreement. But as far as the Oakland A's, they're going to be the team that's most affected by the pending free agency. 9 A's are going to test the free agent market, not sign new contracts, and will play out their option year in 76. And Charlie Finley's not going to pay any of those players. But you can tell he's not going to walk away empty-handed either. He knows he's got to get ahead of the game. Two players in particular, as we get into April 2nd. Meanwhile, on the basketball and hockey side, overshadowing all this, the Golden State Warriors have a good chance to repeat as NBA champions. They have a 56-21 record, 16 and a half Seattle for the second best record in the West Conference, while the Celtics are six up on Cleveland for the best record in the Eastern Conference.
Chris, any closing thoughts from you?
Very, really, really interesting to look back on. I look at the Memphis situation. It's like Memphis, the team who literally did what the AFC East could not do, stop the Dolphins. They signed him in mid 74. They couldn't even make it to the middle of 76, not even under than 2 years. And yet they managed to do what half the league couldn't do, kill the Dolphin dynasty. And now it's all over.
As we wrap up tonight, I want to take a minute to talk about something that's been hanging over the league all month, the Joe Kapp case. Now, Kapp's argument is simple. He believes the NFL essentially forced him out of the league, that the system, contracts, restrictions, the way teams control player movement left him with no real choice. And I'll say this, I don't think he's completely wrong. But I also don't think he's completely right either. Because when you look at this case, Kapp might not have been the right voice to carry the fight, not the right messenger. And sometimes that matters just as much as the message itself. The NFL at this point in 1976 is still very much a controlled system. Teams need structure. They need stability. You can't just have players jumping team to team overnight. That's not a league, that's chaos. So in this case, I find myself siding more with the NFL. But, and this is important, that doesn't mean I agree with everything they're doing. Because we all know where this is heading. 17 years from now, free agency is going to change everything. Players will finally have real movement, real leverage, and real choice. And when that happens, it's going to reshape the entire league. So maybe Joe Kapp doesn't win this case. But that doesn't mean the idea behind it goes away. It just means the league isn't ready for it yet. And history has a funny way of catching up anyway. So for Chris and Charles, I'm Vinny Vincent. This has been Pigskin Glory, and we will see you in 1976.